And ladies and gentlemen, I think we're live. I hope we're live because I'm going to start talking now. Welcome to another episode of Camera and Flask. And this week, it's going to be a good one. We've got some interesting stuff to talk about. Oh, I hear myself because I'm an amateur. I didn't mute my thing.
Every time I do that. Every time.
I know. Excuse me 1 second. Get that cough out of the way. All right, so let's get straight down to business. Ben's sipping on something over there, and let's just all start sipping on something.
Yeah.
So we have
Thank
here
goodness.
in the chat, Rabid Tribble. Love that name, man. Camille.
It's a kind of a rebranding, by the way, of an older person.
Oh, an older
Yes.
friend.
Somebody from Vegas who has rebranded a while ago, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Travis, Oliver, David, Andre, and others. Good to see you. Small Brown Fox. There he is. Okay, so let's get straight down to business. Let us know in the chat what you're going to be partaking with this evening. And I'm just going to get mine out of the way because I'm really excited. Because for once, I have an unopened
Get out
bottle.
of town. Impossible.
Wow.
Impossible. What is this? Vodka we're going in? Oh, Wild Turkey Rye.
Wild Turkey Rye.
Beautiful.
How? When did you buy this?
Like weeks ago, Ben.
Wow. Okay. I'm trying
was
to
telling
work
you guys,
out what the kind of.
I was telling the
What
guys
was the
before we
decent-
went live, I'm not drinking during the week now. Getting back on that. So
Oh, it's good that
had a lot
Wednesday's
of
a
bread,
weekend.
a lot of food. Went to my
Wednesday's
place
the
in
weekend.
Indiana.
Wednesday's the
Yeah,
weekend.
Wednesday's my cheat day. So here we go. Super chat from Camille for the
€5.
booze. €5. All right.
Beautiful. Love it.
Lovely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Neil,
So that's
Ross.
mine. I'm
Yeah.
gonna pour this bad boy in a second. What are we doing? We're just gonna go down and over. So Ben, what's going on? What are you working on? What are you drinking?
This is a project this week that I'm working through. So this is a
Ooh.
Syrah. So it's a Italian
Moody.
dry red. So that's the end of that. That's
Yum.
going to be 3 nights, which I'm very pleased with myself. It's always a big effort not to just go at it and finish the bottle.
Nice.
So that's what I'm on this evening.
And Mr.
We got-
Ben or Jem.
I'll be either one. Depends on how much I drink in the next hour, but I can't because I've got News Shooter coming up later. By the way, Roz, nice to have you back for your second live one. 360 grad finally showing up, and just like the cheerleader that he is, come on! I only see 4 likes. Let's go! Lots of question marks. We appreciate you and everybody else who's here. Sky, Shazam, of course, and are you freaking kidding me? He comes in right at the right moment. I was just about to say, where the frick is the Grumpy Penguin? And you come in at it's as if on cue. Amazing. So I am drinking one of a few birthday presents that I had, and we got Grumpy in the house. I've got a Macallan 12-year. This is a sherry oak cask. It's very lovely. Might have had some with my friend when I was making pizzas in my new pizza oven for the 4th time.
Oh my goodness.
Wait, hold on.
There it is. Mine was very unsatisfying when I
We'll put some of that. That tap water from the Highlands in here. Yeah, but thank you, Dad. Love you, and just so you know, probably from Brooklyn, but here we go. Amazing. Okay, great to have everybody here. I feel like the mood is good today, and we got Grumpy in the house. Caleb, take it away. It's all yours, brother.
All right, let's do this thing. Cheers, chat. Cheers, gentlemen. Let's talk about a camera.
Me needed that's lovely.
Ooh. Oi. Rye, man. Rye all day. Okay.
Delish.
Deep breath, and let's get into today's topic, which is the Canon C70. I just finished watching a video by Matt. Who is Matt? Everyone should, after this, go over. Check out his channel.
Who is Matt?
You can't miss him. Huge beard.
Who is he?
Yeah,
His name is Who is Matt. That's his channel.
Where? Okay.
He's on YouTube. He's
trying to get
all
a
over
on first here,
Instagram.
but yeah.
Oh, nice. There you go. Sorry. And he did a really interesting video. I love his take on it. Essentially, this whole thing with all these cameras coming out is kind of like 3D chess was his analogy. And you've got like Canon R5 announcement right before they start shipping the R5, A7S announcement. The day the A7S is supposed to ship, I believe is how it goes. The C70 announcement, or at least the tease. And then it's like back and forth, back and forth. And what we could see is right around the time the C70 starting to get hot, we're going to see FX6.
Yes.
Yes.
And then Canon could turn around and throw the C50.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then Sony could do A7 IV, and then Canon could do their rumored R5C, R6C.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then, of course, a lot of people are
kind of
saying
crazy.
Yeah, it's
You know,
insane.
Particularly seeing as no one's really, I mean, I know things are picking up for people a little bit now, but no one's been working for the last 6 months. So I don't know who's got the green to be buying this stuff.
Well,
I'm kind of intrigued.
I have a theory that the reason we're having this arms race in cameras is YouTube and content creation.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it in the past, but when we think about cameras, we usually think about Hollywood, production. And so when something like, a pandemic comes through, you think like, well, no one's going to be buying cameras because there's no production. But it's got to be getting into the billion territory of people who their livelihood is creating videos. It's just not on set and with other people. And there's, all of those people, no matter, it's amazing. Like most of my subscribers are other YouTubers. And even if you start with makeup with your iPhone, what ends up happening is you're like, dang, this looks like crap. How do I make it better? They move up to a DSLR. Man, this now looks like mushy HD. What's next? Okay, 4K. And they work up through the ranks, even if they are not traditionally a video person. All of them become video people. And you watch them, over the course of 5-10 years, improve their production and all this stuff. So I have a theory that's what all this is about and why we're getting so much action on this kind of sub $6,000 range, because they have to be selling, right? Why go through all this pain if like no one's buying cameras, right?
Yeah, well, part of it I think is product.
Could be wrong.
Part of its product development cycle, which usually is 3 to 4 years for a camera manufacturer. So they can't stop that cycle. So they have to announce cameras. And then, of course, when one company announces, then it's like, well, here's our announcement that we've been working on for the last 3 years. And then here's our announcement. And, of course, the A7S III being, the unicorn camera that everybody was waiting for. The camera we're going to talk about today, the C70, I wouldn't say is a surprise camera, but it's kind of surprising that they slotted it where they did and when they did. It almost would have made more sense for them to do a 1, 2, 3 punch and do C500 Mark II, C300 Mark III, and then C70, and then go to the R5 and the R6. But I have nothing to do with that, and those are two different divisions of Canon, and who knows how all of that stuff works. So I do agree. I think that there are far more content creators than there have been, and then of course what happens, just like when you're a production company or you're doing your own production stuff for other people or even in-house, is there's a certain point where you step up to the next rung in the ladder, and so there's things about the camera system that you're using which are adequate, but you're seeing where it's falling short for you as a camera operator, as a DP. So you're thrilled that you're using a mirrorless camera, and it's a great solution for certain things. But every single time you build out the camera, or every time you're using it, it's got all of this gack attached to it, and you finally just want that day where you say, it'd be really great if I just had XLR inputs and I had ND and all those other things built into the camera. And if they can, evolve the cameras like they're starting to do with the C70 and some of the other stuff, then maybe that's a good graduation point too. But then for other people, A7S III is going to be fantastic, and so are some of these other mirrorless cameras. I mean, who knows what Panasonic's going to do? Where's the GH6? It could just show up. They've got a lot of opportunity there. So I don't know. How do you feel about things? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and then I'm gonna hand over to Ben. I know this is the C70 show, but there's been a rumor being floating around about a Micro Four Thirds cinema camera. So now I wonder
I
if
saw that.
Panasonic's going to do the GH6 at some point, but in the meantime, play around with the idea of a $4,000 to $6,000 mirrorless camera or Micro Four Thirds camera. Maybe they just throw everything at the wall. They just do it all.
Yeah.
And just go crazy because it's Micro Four Thirds, so it's easier. So
Yeah.
Ben, what do you think about this camera? And maybe you can also, after your thoughts initially, get into specs a little bit for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, where it sits, it seems to be in a bit of a category of its own in terms of that price point in cinema cameras. That it is a little bit lower than I was expecting it to be. I think when we were talking last week, Jem, and we were talking about where we were expecting that to be coming in, I think it's a little lower than I was expecting it to be. So it is sitting in between the mirrorless and the cine camera. So it's interesting to see what everyone else does. Specs wise, so differentiate from the C200, which is of course what
Hey
I'm
Ben,
really interested.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Something's happening with your
Keep going.
audio. It's at
getting
least
really
on my
muddy.
end. It's getting really muffled and muddy, and then and it's been that way for about 20 seconds. Can you start speaking again?
Really? 1, 2, 3. Hello, hello, hello. Testing.
It's getting better
Yeah.
again,
that's
but
back.
there's something that's in your chain. It's happened a few weeks, but it definitely went off, and now it seems to be kicking back in. So sorry.
So it's really strange because it's the camera's, the audio is connected directly into the camera, the mic, and then that's all coming through the cam link together. So it's really strange when
Yeah, it's
things
back
kind of
now.
go awry. And
Yep.
also the sync goes in and out, and clearly it's all coming from the camera feed. So it's
Yeah,
it's a very
strange.
odd thing. Yeah.
Oh no!
Amazing.
Um,
But look at those
Oh,
flowing
man.
locks. Look at those flowing
Yep,
locks
beautiful.
that Ben Barden has. It's amazing.
All
Well,
right, you
we'll
wanna
get
pick
Ben
up
will be back.
with introducing us into C70 specs,
Yeah,
where you think the camera
yeah.
lands, all that fun stuff. Kind of an overview
So-
for everyone.
So basically, what we're looking at here, I mean, and you can of course go to the news shooter article, cined.com, those places for detailed specs and all the normal cast of characters in terms of their breakdowns. But essentially, what we're looking at is a shrunken C2, a C300 Mark III. So let's that's if we want to take the full size XLR ports out of there. And we want to take Ben. It's lovely to have you. Your flowing locks were amazing. Yeah.
It kicked me out.
Who did?
The Ecamm.
Blame it on your audio. Your audio kicked you out. It's
All right, well, you can clearly
ridiculous.
hear me now anyway, so right, fine.
So Ben, we were just going over a basic overview of the camera. Jen was saying,
It's like
mini
it's like a little
C300.
sibling. It's kind of like a little sibling to the C300 Mark III, which is
It's like the
to
one
me-
DC, an old
Yes.
old man sired
Yes.
a child with the C300
Sired.
Mark II.
You know what? I'll cheers to that, and I'll have a drink anytime somebody says sired in this episode. Amazing. And I'll give you some funky AF too while we're at it.
Amazing.
C300 Mark III, sans Cinema Raw Light, sans full-size XLR, sans a few little things here and there, but quite honestly, it's the same exact sensor, and Canon has said as much. And
Have they
it
finally admitted
has...
that now?
Oh yeah, it's in the video. It's there's a video from Canon. Paul's in it, who I know, who officially says on the video it is the same exact sensor as the C300 Mark III. There was a little confusion over at CineD on that, but that's been cleared up. And honestly, to me, for $5,500 US, save for the fact that it does not have an articulating grip unit, and somebody asked in the chat whether or not that remote port will be compatible with the one from the C200. I don't know. There's obviously no EVF on the camera. That's also a change from the C300 Mark III. There's no SDI port. That's a big one that's not on there. So we're just trying to call out the things that aren't on the camera. but you can buy two C70s for the price of one C300 Mark III, approximately in US dollars. And so you have to look at the pluses and the minuses of this camera and say, okay, I get the benefit of RF mount. If I put an RF to EF mount on there, I can put that, I don't need the ND anymore like the R series, but I do have that flexibility. And of course, what they're doing, which is really interesting, which goes back to what you were saying, Caleb, about the Micro Four Thirds cinema camera, is this is like one of, if not the first official like big camera company that's coming out with a speed booster, because they have a speed booster for this, so that you can go from RF mount to EF mount, and you can get your field of view of full frame. So when you're using your EF lenses, so that is huge.
That's the thing I'm more excited about that than anything else with this camera. What that gives me over the C200, that's the huge thing, because obviously with the 10-bit files and everything else, but the 8-bit files off the C200 for pretty much everything I do are great. Yeah. They grade really nicely. They are far better than the spec would suggest them to be, and that's fine. I have no complaints with that. Being able to get full frame, via the adapter, and then being able to put any other glass on it, because the flange distance being so tiny with that mount, that's really, really interesting. Form factor wise, I'm kind of slightly can't decide whether I like that or not. I certainly don't like the fact that there's no EVF on it, because a lot of the time, and I don't know with this with their screen how easy that's going to be in bright sunlight, but I shoot with this so much of the time, like in a sort of SLR position, with one hand under the lens and my eye, it braced against my head. And the form factor of that new camera is more or less like a slightly fatter 1DX.
Right.
And me, it screams to be held like this up to my face. And Matt Allard on their article made a really exactly my thoughts on it. He was saying, well, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up having that kind of round your belly with hand underneath and if you're our height, Jem, that's a problem, because you're just looking at people's knees, You
mean Hobbit height?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're Matt's height,
Caleb's height, looking down on us right now. Look, he's actually looking down on you, condescendingly almost in this live stream.
It did look a little that way. Yeah. So to me, that is a bit of an odd decision to have gone for that form factor and not put in an EVF. So it's quite a big deal for me, that, because I don't want to start having to put a third party one on it. That's an irritant. That's the whole. Would
you have been all right if they took the hot shoe, and they had an EVF attachment, so you could buy it as a third party? Would that have been okay for you?
That would be not ideal, but yes, I would. That would be acceptable if it was kept in a very small form factor that wasn't really protruding that far off the back of the camera. I want the thing to be using it like an SLR. And their C series cameras, we've always had that, and I've always liked that form factor right back to the C100, C3, and that's all been able to be shot that way. And it just seems a really odd thing to have gone for something that's so clearly DSLR or SLR shape, and then not have that there. It just seems a slightly awkward thing to then hold, or to be able to brace it against yourself somehow. Yeah. So but that's a very minor niggle. That the XLR things, I'm not, it's a slight pain. I wish they could have somehow found a way to put full size ones on. It's just one more thing to go wrong with the adapter cables.
I feel like they could solve that someday. Like they do it. It's just not the way we want. Like they have, take any cinema camera from them. They have an XLR unit on the older ones, on the handle. So I could see where they could very easily find a way to integrate that.
Yeah.
I think again the appeal for those is not to having to be rigging stuff out. I don't want lots of shit that I have to attach to it. And
but if it had like a hot shoe integration.
Then you could, the hot shoe integration, we've said this with all their cameras, that they don't have the thing that Sony and other manufacturers have got, where you can put the audio module on the top. the interesting thing,
And
that
they own the
that
MA400. They've designed the MA400, which is an XLR, that's used for the XC15, XC20,
right,
used on the C300 Mark, 2 as an extension with that, LMV1 screen. They have it. They just haven't connected the dots and said we're going to take that and make it hot shoe, accessible, which they could have done across the whole R line and the new C series, I think. Don't you?
yeah. And again, it's a slightly odd thing with why they've gone for this form factor and in some ways limited themselves to what they can fit in it. But there are clear reasons why. So in terms of being able to put the thing on a gimbal and being able to get the weight pretty much central, excluding the lens, that's a big deal. Being able to balance on more gimbals. So I guess that's probably why. Audio wise, the other thing that I am really pleased to see is that they've still kept 4-channel audio on there, so you can, in the same way that the C200 does, and I'm using that all the time at the moment, is running 4 mics into that camera. I've got 3 wireless systems going in, plus a shotgun on the camera, and it's brilliant. It's a slightly clunky way that you have to use the ones that are coming into the mic input, but amazing to have the option. So I'm very pleased to see that.
I don't think they took the easy way out, though. Like, I see a lot of comments up here. I don't think Canon took the easy way out here. They could have easily have made an RF mount camera and said, if you want ND, you've got to get the RF to EF mount, and you've got to put that very ND in there, or just add it to your lenses. They're taking the chance with this new form factor. This exploded, mirrorless, kind of medium format-ish kind of size camera. And I don't think that they, Benjamin, took the cripple hammer to the C70 in order to protect the C300 Mark III. If anything, I'm shocked that all of the codecs are in there. We've got wide gamut. We've got all of the log, modes that are inside of there. We virtually have every feature that you have from a shooting standpoint, except for cinema raw light, that's in the C300 Mark III in a camera that's half the price. So we can all nitpick and say, why didn't they give us RAW? Why don't we have this? Why don't we have that? There's no SDI. There is a timecode port, which I think is a big jump. The fact that if people want to use this on smaller productions and multicam, they just need to use a BNC cable and they can jam sync between cameras. I don't think they are actually. I think they actually looked at this camera, and it's got a brilliant menu design. It's the first time that they're kind of moving more towards this Black Magic touchscreen menu where you don't have to dig into the menus. They've never had horrible menus like Sony and Panasonic, but their new menu is very visual. You get a feature up, and you can choose a lot of your stuff right there on the screen. Caleb, to me, that's like a huge, big advance. It's not even the C300 Mark III or the C500 Mark II. They've really kind of said, this is where we're going with menu systems going forward. I'd almost love them to do an update on the other 2 cinema cameras that they've come out with. But I don't... Is the C300 Mark III a touchscreen? It might be, right? It is. They're all touchscreen. So they could technically update the firmware so that they could give that same menu system, I think, to the C300 Mark III, which would be kind of interesting for them to do as a camera. Blackmagic has done it in the past. They've totally updated their entire user interface for their cameras.
Yep.
They have. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple things. By the way, chat, please hit us with questions. We want this to be a chat engaged session and stream.
Yes.
And to go off what Jen was saying, I think it's perfect. I honestly think Canon did a good job. On paper, without seeing a lot of footage and touching it, it seems like it's phenomenal for what it is. It's perfect. It's just that kind of like, ooh, you wanted the R5, but it didn't work out for you. Well, C70 and RF, speed booster. And then at the same time, on the high end, if you own a C500 and or a C300, this is a perfect slap it on a gimbal, drone it camera, where you don't care about all the stuff that we, have been talking about so far. And Kit says, I don't think AF is necessary for camera operators, vloggers, and YouTube solo hosts. Yes. I don't know, man. I'm amazed at how many people I come across who, I'm not, I love good autofocus, of course. but image quality is like still paramount to me. That's why I haven't become like a Sony solo shooter, like only Sony cameras. But you'd be amazed at how many people, who are shooting big deal stuff, use autofocus, and they don't want to touch anything that doesn't at least have the option to do really good autofocus. So I think that's 100% where we're going. Another 2 generations from now, 100 years from now, or even 50, 30 years from now, I'd be surprised if, the amount of people who are manual only, even all the way up at the top, is going to be really interesting.
I agree. I think it's such a powerful tool.
And I was thinking about this actually today. Someone sent me an email asking for lens recommendations, and they had like manual focus and autofocus requirements. And I think that's kind of the next frontier for lenses is how can we make a cinema lens that is great at autofocus, but also a phenomenal manual focus operation lens. So I think that's going to be interesting for companies like, like Tamron, or not Tamron, Takina, or I don't know, all of them, to be able to make something that has that clutch system or some way to give us hard stops, silky manual focus, and be able to do good autofocus. And it'll happen eventually, but it's gonna be hot. So
let's go over to the chat. I think Harrison is what do we think about the quarter 20 thread on the side of the camera for 1080 by 1920 shooting? It's actually, to my understanding, for 2160 by 3840 shooting. I mean, you can do UHD 4K using that in vertical video. Sure. I think it's a smart move. I don't think there's any downside to putting the feature inside of the camera. And if people need to shoot vertical video, they don't have to get a ball head. They don't have to do that kind of stuff that on a standard video head is a real pain in the butt. So I think it doesn't hurt that they keep putting all of these things into the camera. I also think that if you're going to buy a C300 Mark III or you own one already, why in your right mind would you buy a second C300 Mark III unless you have to have the SDI out, the cinema raw light? It's a perfect, as you said, B or C camera to that camera system, especially because it is the same exact sensor, which can be a huge deal, in multi-camera production. And
I don't think it's necessarily throw the feature in. Their marketing material shows the vertical video, like it's a big feature for them. Which,
but
if you think about it,
it's more than the
TikTok.
mount.
What?
Yeah, right. And it's more than just the mount. The whole thing, the menus rotate round. The whole it's a proper thought out thing.
It's a vertical video cinema camera. Yeah, like that's not its main thing, but it's a big deal to Canon, and they're marketing it. And I think it's kind of like the gaming industry. Like people throw, like what are these kids doing watching other gamers play games, watching streamers play video games. But the views on multiple of these people, we're not talking about like gaming TV channels. We're talking, or ESPN. We're talking about like a guy in his bedroom. The views on those like gamers, like each one of their nightly streams, like is like multiple Super Bowls put together. It's insane. And in TikTok, you look at the numbers there, the amount of people watching. So surely Canon's, tapping into that too, which is wild.
I do want to say something about that.
That makes me feel so old, because I don't know anything about TikTok. Never downloaded the app.
Imagine
don't you guys think? Well, yeah, exactly. Imagine how I feel. I'm the elder statesman here. I will say that the other thing about that, before we beat the vertical video thing to death, which we're going to, is that, not to be a doomsayer, but we are living in a changed world. And I think that the way we interact with our outside environment is going to change very quickly. And I think that vertical displays and interaction with vertical displays and how we ingest information when we're in public spaces is just going to increase. I think it's going to explode. So the fact that they have this feature in their camera and it's a workaround in other cameras in terms of timeline and how you set up the camera and everything else. Like you said, they're putting a big focus on it, but I don't think it's just a here's an extra feature inside of the camera.
No,
You know?
and the ease of that. I had a gig in January or February before the world went mad this year, which was an 8K vertical video thing, and it was very, very tight on the spec. So I rented a Red to do it, and rigging that fucker, what a nightmare! Just to be able to get the thing to and trying to go through it. So you get the thing on, and then you're trying to go through and you're trying to change settings, and of course all the menus about it. It seems like a minor thing, but it's such an enormous pain in the ass. So I get it completely. It's not the majority of what I do, but it's a huge thing to be able to have it.
I did it on the R5, and it works brilliantly. You literally just shoot vertical video, and you pull it into any NLE. It just sets up your timeline for 9x16 instead of 16x9, and away you go.
Really,
so
Which is just
I mean,
the best for your 7.5 minute video. Awesome.
So there you go. All right, keep us going. What do we got in the chat? Any good questions or comments?
Do you think more third-party RF lenses with AF? Do you think that there will be more?
Yes.
From Shazam.
Yeah,
Without
I
doubt.
think we're in the last phase of when it comes to companies like Canon. I would be really surprised if we're not starting to enter the last phase, and with Sony, of Super 35 APS-C based camera systems. I think that the cost of entry for full frame is coming down. Okay. And I think that they've already put the features into the cameras where we can say, oh, we've got a full frame, let's just set it up to Super 35. We want to go to 16, we can go to 16. So it's already sitting inside of the camera. The C500 Mark II already has it. So why not eventually, as cost per sensor comes down, just put the full frame sensor in there into all of your cameras. So I don't think that the successor to the C70 will be a Super 35 millimeter sensor. I think it'll be a sensor like the C500 Mark II or a variation of the C300 Mark III sensor that will be full frame, which will give you all of those shooting modes inside of there. So if you're using lenses that don't have full coverage, you still have that option. Nobody's talked about lens mounts too. That's also a differentiating factor between C300 Mark III and C70. This is an RF mount. We don't have a PL mount option here with this camera, so it's very much, to me, geared towards the corporate market and obviously that creator market that we're talking about.
Yeah.
But and I don't know the answer to this, but given the flange distance of that camera, there's physically got to be there surely is a way that you can adapt. Someone will
100%.
come out with an adapter to put a PL.
Oh,
into
100%.
Wooden camera, 100%.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't a wooden camera
right
come
now.
out with that adapter?
Buy it right
And
now.
I mean, that's what people are doing Komodo. So Komodo is RF mount. They're already adapting PL mount to that camera. It's just not the same RF mount because it doesn't have all the. See, that's why.
Jeez. So you totally can. The problem is, if your cinema lens is 4 pounds or heavier or whatever, it used to be with an adapter closer to the body, but with the RF, it's further out, as you know.
Yes. So it pulls.
So
you've got that leverage issue
exactly
as well,
which is interesting. Which I think Canon is starting to solve, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more cinema adapters from them. Because that Metabones,
Exactly.
did you notice there's like those mounting brackets or whatever on the Metabones?
Yeah,
but not Metabones. They're new focal
their
reducer,
speed booster.
the Canon one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever you call it, they call it. Yeah,
Which is
that
interesting.
definitely opens it up. It is, and Canon. The interesting thing is because to me now, because for them they're entirely invested in this new mount now. EF is dead in the water. However, the interesting thing with this camera is with their mount is, to me, it only makes it, the thing that makes it attractive to me is using it with the EF glass with the adapter and having the full frame thing. But I do feel we're in the final, and exactly going back to what you were saying, Jem, is that everyone's going to be doing full frame. We're going to see very few Super 35s going forward. So that lens mount is just going to the RF stuff, the RF lenses, there's just going to be everyone making them, without a doubt. Very soon, we are without doubt in the final throes of EF, and it's long in the tooth. It's really long in the tooth. I think when I did what year did that come out? The EF mount. I'm pretty sure I did my work
Oh, it's
experience
ancient history, all right?
when I was 16 years old, shooting on for a newspaper, shooting on EF lenses.
Yeah.
Which would be like, I don't know,
A couple of years ago.
So a couple of years ago.
So from that standpoint, though, Caleb, I think that we also just have to look at the overall picture of, something that you talked about, which is that when you talk about Micro Four Thirds, we also talk about the fact that the GH4, GH5, GH5S have been wildly successful for Panasonic, and that one of the ways that they get around this problem is with speed boosters to give you that additional angle of view. I don't think there's any reason why Panasonic couldn't go the Canon route, and they could come out with a Micro Four Thirds, let's say, cinema camera, and they could speed boost it either themselves or through third party. But the advantage to that, which you've talked about many times, is the fact that you have that smaller sensor. There's so much you can do when you have a sensor that isn't generating the same kind of heat and all of the other issues that come with going to Super 35, but especially a full frame sensor. So how do we feel about that? So we talk about sort of the death of APS-C and Super 35 and everything going to full frame, but do we still feel that that Micro Four Thirds has a place, and because of that advantage you talk about, Caleb? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I feel like there's still a place for Micro Four Thirds. I mean, I think they'll keep making them as long as they keep selling them. And because it's kind of like a playground of the crazy, right?
Yeah.
So everyone else, it's like their baseline, their cheapest thing they can make is APS-C. Yeah. Meanwhile, Panasonic, can can just go crazy because they have these adorable little Micro Four Thirds sensors that, they can just throw some wild stuff in there. Like the GH5, ever since, I don't know, GH4, I feel like was the first time they just started going crazy with 4K. What is that? And then the GH5, it's like, yeah, sure. 4K, anamorphic 6K, and we'll throw in IBIS and all this stuff. So as long as they can keep that train rolling, why not?
Yeah. And I think that camera is still the reason why we have a lot of what we have now in terms of the bigger sensor stuff coming, because it just had to compete with it. It was mental what was in that camera when it came out.
It is. Fun fact, today was the first day since the GH5 came out that I shot a video with a non-GH5, the B-roll stuff. I have, to this day, done primarily everything on the GH5, not the GH5S, just because, and this is an example of where I think the Micro Four Thirds system is a better way to go, is because I can shoot at f2.8 on a Micro Four Thirds and get the depth of field of an f4 or 5.6 or whatever.
Yeah.
And when you're right on top of a product, it's perfect. I can get the light I need. It's just all just right. Whereas today I shot on full frame, and the amount of light I needed to throw on it to get to 5.6, it's just weird. It's crazy.
A7S3, or you can't say, or some secret
A7S3. My A7S3 arrived. Yeah.
You guys remember this?
Oh yeah, baby.
So that if we're talking Micro Four Thirds, if we're talking about Micro Four Thirds, that's the AF100, and that's kind of like the little camera that changed it all. It never kind of hit a version 2, but that's your Micro Four Thirds cinema camera from Panasonic. So it has existed. It did exist, and it was the first camera that really jumped us from a 1/3 half-inch sensor camera to a larger sensor before we started to see Super 35 millimeter sensors in camera systems. And so, we're talking about the fact that Panasonic might do a Micro Four Thirds cinema camera. They did it a long ass time ago, and they really could take what they've now done.
Was it a cinema camera or was it a camcorder?
They may have called it a camcorder, but in my mind, because it shot 24 and it had, shutter angle and those types of things, I think it could be categorized as a digital cinema camera. They're all mirrorless cameras as well. We call everything a mirrorless camera that's of a certain size. Every camera that we buy, I mean, an Alexa is a mirrorless camera. That's what it is, but it's just the category. So, yeah, I don't know. I would consider it sort of the first larger sensor digital cinema camera. Wasn't great in low light, but, it was sort of the beginning of everything. If there was speed boosters and Metabones was around back then, I think that maybe they would have continued, along that line. But instead they went GH4 route. Yeah.
Okay, question for you two gentlemen, because you guys would probably know definitely way more than I would. From Eli, and I apologize to Eli for missing this comment because it's relevant and it's a good question. So what settings would be the absolute best image quality on a C70, and what kind of computer processing power does it need to edit? Does one need to edit it?
Yeah, probably one for Jem, but it's the all-eye 4K, I guess, isn't it?
It's XFAVC. It's basically 410 megabits per second, 10-bit 422. But the question is the 225 megabits per second long GOP more friendly for post, and is it pretty comparable in terms of overall image quality, because it's still 10-bit 422. And remember, this camera, unlike the C300 Mark III and the other Cinema EOS cameras, aside from, of course, the C200, this camera is recording to SD cards, SDXC cards. So we are, probably wanting to put V90 cards into that camera, but cost of entry is definitely lower in terms of media. And by the way, the battery on this thing lasts forever and ever and ever. It's like the BP 30 lasts as long as like a 60 on the C300 Mark III. And you put a 60 in there, and it's something ridiculous, like 400 and something minutes for your battery life on the camera.
That's amazing.
So it's so efficient when it comes to battery. You could get the 30 that comes with it and buy a 60, and unless you're an asshole, you wouldn't be shooting more than that on the camera in the day. Like you'd have to just say, I'm just going to leave the camera rolling the whole time. So, I think that going back to the question, it's, you're going to have to decide what your gamma and your gamut's going to be, but it's at 410 is probably going to be your best option. But I think that the 225 is going to be fantastic, and it's in the C300 Mark III as well, and I have a client who just got one, and I think we're going to set it up for that lower data rate in the studio, because, it's just how many bits are you moving around, and how much, when you're uploading files and you're downloading them and you have remote editors, you don't want to be pushing around 410 megabits, if you have a 225 option, and visually for the type of work you're doing, it's not really making a difference. And contrary to belief, we've talked about this in the past, long GOP sometimes is friendlier in NLEs. Maybe not on this camera, but it seems to be when we go to H.265 with HEVC, that long GOP tends to be a little friendlier in a timeline than actually all eye, which is, again, contrary to what we would normally believe, because all eye is all intra, it's all frames, it should be less math. But something about it, I don't know. Yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that I edited my first video using the A7S III today, and I didn't think about it, but I realized the footage just seemed to work nicely in Final Cut.
Oh, really?
More than I was expecting. And I was shooting everything on their XAVC SI. So 4K 24, that's 280, I believe, megabits a second.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. Worked great. And I think Gerald mentioned it, that what's interesting about Sony is they went with the H.264 for their all-eye.
Yep.
Versus a lot of people going with H.265, which seems to struggle.
I agree. And that's, this camera is H.264. So and so
Right.
is the C300 Mark III.
Right.
It's basically, like a grown up. It's not even if we took it the C300 Mark II camera and we had that codec, which was 410 megabits per second for UHD 4K. It's, from what I understand, the same exact codec, which is very NLE friendly, even at 410 megabits per second. And I think that we just have that in cameras now with much better sensors. That's what we have, because the C300 Mark III is a sharper, better, more advanced sensor than we had in the C300 Mark II, which by today's standards is a pretty soft sensor in terms of the picture it captures. Same with the C200. It's a little soft. You're going to see a big jump in terms of sharpness and clarity of picture on these newer sensors that they're creating. So I agree. I think that H.265 is sort of the crossover point where when you start talking about all eye and long GOP, it's a totally different ballpark than H.264. And I think that that's really important to understand. And from all of my experience, anytime I bring that into a timeline, it's always better in long GOP in H.265, and it has no problem at all in all eye in H.264. So that's been my experience. Yeah.
Interesting. All right,
Yeah.
so here's the scoop, folks. We've got 15 minutes left. The chat's kind of starting to die down, but I want you to ignite the fire.
Let's go.
We need some love over here. So more questions, please, from you beautiful people. GNCK said, honestly, I believe the future is more in wireless link and triggers designed, mounted on side handle, shoulder rigs, not allowed, no latency focus, tilta, something with their pocket cages. Okay, interesting.
Okay.
And then question for you two guys while we wait for the chat to, we
Wake
got
up, chat.
59 people here. What's going on? Let us know if there's anything you want to talk about. Any questions or just comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this and other cameras. But in the meantime, Jem and Ben, first question. Will you, let's say Canon stops from today for a year and doesn't produce any cameras, would you ever buy a C70? Question 2, since you're both Canon guys and that's kind of your workhorse land on the cinema camera end, of their current offerings, would you be buying any of their stuff in the next year or so? So we'll start with Ben.
I'm seriously thinking about C70. I'm very seriously thinking about.
Oh, okay.
And I think the main issue at the I think for what I do for the most part, I think it gives me enough advantages over the C200 to make a difference. It really does. So higher frame rates, autofocus, and autofocus that's improved and works at the higher frame rates. So that's all big pluses over the C200. Having that speed booster option to be able to get the full frame look, and of course that also gives you an extra stop on your lenses. So that all is exceptionally attractive to me. I've shot one project in the 2 years that I've had the C200 in RAW, so it's beautiful and I love it, but I just don't really work in that way because it's just not. I'm not working on the kind of projects that I can justify dealing with it. So I am considering it. I think the biggest issue at the moment is the fact that everyone's thinking the same thing, and the C200 used market is going to be severely swamped. The one plus in all of this, I have to say, and thank you very much, but you could have waited 3 more weeks, my friend, is I was about to sell my FS700.
Oh no!
You could have just
I'm
waited
so sorry.
a little bit longer to go and drive the price.
For some reason, I thought you were like totally gone. But here's the thing.
No.
Actually, hold on a second. You're good to go. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was talking to Dan Chung.
No, you're not.
And I told he was about to sell it, and I'm like, dude, wait a couple days. I'm gonna do a video. The prices will go up, and then you can sell yours for higher.
Do it.
Right?
Yeah.
Time to put it on the market.
Because you have not sold yours, right?
No, but there's an issue. This is why I was saying like 2-3 weeks, because I am in the Czech Republic. Travel within Europe is kind of tricky right now, particularly from here to anywhere else, because we're kind of the lepers of Europe at this particular moment in time. So no one wants us anywhere near them. What we the problem is that I am imminently going to the UK. Certainly the beginning of November, come what may, I am going to the UK to get
Yep.
all my stuff to bring it back here.
Yep.
The FS 700 is in the UK, where I am not.
I see.
Got it.
Yeah.
By
But
the way, this
I
is
might be able to
yeah.
get someone to send it to me.
This is the most silent
Su-
I've ever seen the chat. By the way, this is ridiculous.
I know.
I know.
It completely
I
died
mean, like,
off.
is
even
everybody
going? Is the
drunk
video
or
even
did you
going?
all pass out? Yeah, I put a chat in there. Check if the video's going, but I have never seen the chat this quiet.
It
Can
stayed
somebody post?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. What happened? Is it that boring? Come on. Okay, Ben, you suck.
Maybe we're just talking.
What do we have to
into
do?
Space.
Yeah, what's going on? I would like to know. This is out of control.
Right, I'm
it
going
says
to the
we're
channel,
live.
clicking on
Oh
clicking
boy,
on live.
here we go. All right.
It's live.
Well, since
everyone it's like the rapture around
Shazam,
here. What's
come
going
on,
on?
360 grad, Harrison, Kit, come on, David, come on. You're making drink menus here. Did you just have too many today? What's happening with Bill, Andres? Just a chat. What's going on here, Benjamin? Small brown fox.
All right.
Okay, nothing. Okay, I'm going to answer the question that you asked.
Real
What is
quick,
it?
I'm going to interrupt
Yeah.
you before you do that.
Yes.
Super quick.
Please.
Two things,
Yeah.
Ben. It
Yes.
looks like you could still get some money for that C200. You might be able to do a close to direct swap over pre-speed booster. Thing number two, you could put your FS700 on sale on eBay and say you're on holiday until you can travel next.
Ooh.
That way you can sell, because I've been seeing that a lot. People are on holiday. You can still buy it, but it just lets you know it might take a little while to ship.
Cool.
So,
I like that
anyway.
idea. That's a great idea. Yeah. The C200s,
Gem,
they're kind
C70.
of, I've seen them for sale for a little bit less than the price of the 70, but it's not a long way off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm thinking there's something wrong with the chat.
Swap. Oh yeah.
Well,
I mean, hold on a second. Let me go to YouTube. Is the chat working there?
I don't know.
Maybe
I
it's
just
working there
added
and it's
2
not
comments.
working in Ecamm.
Oh, interesting. So
Because that last
would be
comment was
interesting.
It's
a long time
1,000.
ago.
Wait, hold on. It's loading. It's loading. It might still. Okay. Yeah, it's 100% working on YouTube. It died in Ecamm. So for those listening,
Unbelievable.
the software we use, it shows the chat, but it just stopped like 25 minutes
Amazing.
ago. So it is 100%
Unbelievable.
still
Okay.
going.
Oh my
It's
God.
very alive.
Because that did not seem like a normal
Like
camera
we've
in
got
Flask.
a donation in here and all kinds of stuff.
What? Oh my God. Call it out.
Oh,
Let's
no.
go.
Benjamin
Unbelievable.
Roland, $5 just because you rock.
Oh,
So I
amazing.
apologize, everybody.
Yes. So start pulling some questions because I don't
They're
want
all
to screw
like,
this
what are you
up.
talking about? We're all here. That's great. I'm so sorry, guys. All right. We've got 7 minutes left. Jem Schofield, will you pick up the C70 / what's your next camera to be? And I'll check the chat here.
If money was no object, which it is right now, it isn't no object. It is an object. I would love to pick up 2 of those cameras and put them in my studio, to be honest with you. I think that it ticks the boxes I need it to tick, and I can get what I need out of the cameras. I think they really hit a home run here. And this is not Canon fanboy. Like, if I could figure out a way to, put 3 XT4s into my studio and feel like I could run the studio the way I want to off of those cameras, I probably would. But we're talking about a more advanced AF system. We're talking about, obviously, when I take them out in the field, the built-in 10 stops of ND, time code sync, they're a known quantity. And I just think that they've done a fantastic job on this camera. I mean, I think it's going to be a problem for certain people form factor wise, and I think it's a little big for smaller gimbal systems, but I do think that if you really look at it, that for the dollars that they're going to charge for this camera, some people will say it's too expensive. I think that this camera is really a lot of camera for your money. So that's all I got for that.
Yes,
Okay.
I agree.
I am so sorry, guys. Some wonderful chat you guys pulled through here, because on our end it just completely cut off forever ago. So we talked about the C200. I'm looking at the chat here. There's a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
Would you ever buy the R6? This is Eli. Would you ever buy the R6 as a B
Oh,
cam for the C70?
that's a great
Thoughts?
question. And well, yeah, because I was looking at this, and then when this camera came out, I was seriously interested in the R6. Caleb, you and I were both saying we were really excited when those two cameras, the 5 and the 6, were announced. We were both going, the 6 is probably the one. And then I watched Potato Jet's video. I went, no,
Unbelievable! What a
no.
trash fire! And I'm 100%. I'm 2 days past my return for B&H. I'm so
For what?
upset.
Oh no, really?
I bought the R6. It sat in a box. I did one quick test with it, but I've been doing all this A7S and other stuff, and then I've been shooting with it a little bit, and it's just not. It's not. Don't avoid. Warning.
Abort.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
honestly, I'm thinking about doing a video. Buy an R EOS R with a Metabones
Interesting.
or EF to RF if you want.
But it
Canon
doesn't work.
mirrorless.
But apparently it doesn't. Canon is saying that their new speed booster thing doesn't work on the RF. Sorry, on the EOS R.
No. Metabones now makes a
Do they? They do
EF
their
to
own?
RF. Yes.
Ah,
So I'm going to do a video
didn't
before I
know that.
sell mine comparing the R to the 6 with the Metabones.
ooh, that's very interesting. Because
But
I
yeah,
still love
R6
the R.
not going to cut it.
Still think that's a great camera. I'm still getting nice stuff off it. I still like the image off it. You know, you just need to turn the sharpening up 2 stops in the
Right.
settings, and then it's great. Yeah, and bargain at the moment. Goes up for absolutely no money needed.
Yeah, 100%.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Got,
Wait, hold on. I don't see the new messages when I'm looking at the chat. It's so weird.
Reload
my
or
side.
empty cache maybe on Safari. Developer.
Maybe.
empty
I'm in
cache.
Chrome, but yeah, I'll do it again.
Oh my
but
gosh!
That's weird.
I don't know if this is a glitch, but on the top of my chat screen, maybe YouTube's having struggles. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 $5 donations from Benjamin, but only one came through. So Benjamin, if you dropped 1 or 5 $5 donations,
Yeah, reverse
that's
them.
awesome.
Yeah, but
Real quick, guys, we've got let's see, 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 minutes left before the end of the show.
yeah.
Eli, dadgum, if that's for real, holy smokes.
What? What do
We've
you
got
mean?
a couple minutes left. Really quick, Jem and Ben, what if Canon comes out with a C50? What do they need to do with it, or what would you want them to do with it?
No interest.
C50. No interest. Pass.
C50 on their normal sort of non-couture stuff is going to be a higher spec one than the 70.
I mean,
that was
if they
Lower spec.
Lower spec. Oh,
Not
I'm not
interested.
interested.
Not interested.
Oh, okay. For me, it would be
well,
an R6 that doesn't overheat.
Yeah,
And doesn't have the weird crap.
I agree. It's just for me personally, I need something that does stills as well, and I'd rather not have 3 bodies. I'd rather have something that's a B cam,
Right on.
that does stills, the A cam that's a pure cine camera, and then that's all done and dusted.
Yeah.
So to me,
C70.
it doesn't.
Yeah, C70 is going to
That's
go
what
down
I'm-
in price in a
yeah.
year anyway. It'll be $4,500 US by end of 2021.
Sure.
It's hitting the right price point. I don't see we're gonna lose too much in that next camera for us to probably be interested in it. I think
Yeah.
personally. Oh, whoa!
Taylor,
Now I got
C70
tons of
is
chats.
It's
The
not,
chat
it
just
isn't.
woke up. I'm seeing all of the chats just populate
you
now,
are?
one
Yeah.
after the
chat
other.
is
Yeah.
on fire. On fire. Film Kit says, why do you dislike the R6? I would check out Potato Jet's video. I found similar results
Yes.
on my end. And in short, it's a if you're buying it for video, it's an expensive camera that overheats.
Yeah.
Compared to the competition. So
Yeah.
with that, we've got a minute left. Next week, gentlemen, we got to figure out a new topic. Yeah, the chat's 100% back. I apologize for that glitch earlier. Maybe next week
I
we'll
think
kind
it's
of do a
YouTube.
chat-heavy video.
Yep.
Because
Let's
this
do
was
chat
good.
heavy.
This was good. This was good. 62
Let's
of
do
you
it.
chilling with us right now.
Love it.
And we'll figure out something for next week. It'll be a good time. We just crossed over to the 6 p.m. mark. My wife's got book club. She's about to walk out the door, and I've got to watch
Let's
2
do it.
kids. So I'm going to take off. Thank you, gentlemen, for hanging out.
Love you guys. Yep.
Jem,
Amazing.
Ben. We'll see you next week. Chat. Bunch of beautiful people. Hope to see you next time.
If you love cameras, come over to New Shooter's website. We're going to talk about it in about
right
half an
after
hour.
this.
Like last 10 to
Yeah, half
12
an hour.
years with Matt and Eric. I'm just kind of the one that moves it along. I just keep talking like a
Delicious.
numbnut. Love you guys.
Beautiful.
See ya. All the best.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Good night all.